Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're going to be going over a deck from 2004 called Exploud. So before we get into the deck, I just want to give a quick shout out. Colin Mall is a buddy of mine and a solid player from old format. He played a ton in 2004, as well as some of the subsequent years, but a lot of the like brain power behind this original idea came from a list that was his. So he played Exploud at this tournament called the, I think it was called the Southwest Stadium Challenge. It was like essentially a regional. And he got a top 16 finish. He was undefeated until he lost in top 16. Back in the day, it worked like you did Swiss rounds, and then it was top 32, and then as soon as you lost in top 32, you were out. So he did lose in top 16, unfortunately, but he was undefeated until then. And the list now is pretty starkly different from his list. But originally, the idea for Exploud did come from Colin. So I just wanted to give a shout out there. Definitely a solid homie and a solid deck list creator. Okay, let's get right into it. So starting off with 4 Whismur. Whismur's got 50 HP, a single retreat, and a weakness to fighting. The Whale is the first attack. Whale is actually a very, very good attack. So for 1 colorless, you do 10, and then says your opponent switches the defending Pokemon with one of his or her bench Pokemon. So if your opponent starts like a Dunsparce, this meta in 2004 is pretty much all Dunsparce. Almost every good deck plays Dunsparce. It's just such a good card. This deck plays Dunsparce. It's just an amazing card. So if they start Dunsparce, which they should, and they bench another Pokemon, and then you have Whale and an energy, you can force them to kind of like reverse a turn. Because okay, so let's say you didn't Whale, they just have the opportunity to use Strike and Run and then set up their board with Dunsparce. But if you do use Whale, you force them to switch with their bench Pokemon, and then they don't have that option to just attach and set up their board really well. They kind of are in a tricky spot. They can either attach to the Pokemon that you brought up and kind of start building that up, but not amazing when you don't really have a board set up yet. But they don't really have the option to retreat either. Like, they have to have a hard switch out in hand if they want to be using Dunsparce in that turn, which is actually really good. Most decks only play like 1 or 2 switch cards, so being able to force them into a really awkward position where they're like, well, I guess I'll attach the Dunsparce this turn and then attach retreat next turn. That's even if they have 2 energies. So definitely a solid stall tactic until you set up. Whale is a really solid attack in this format. We also play 3 Loudred. So Loudred's got 80 HP. Up by 1 on the retreat, so you got a 2 retreat on this guy, and then retains that weakness to fighting. So Cracking Voice, 2 for 20, flip a coin of heads, each defending Pokemon is now confused. The wording on this attack is kind of confusing. Back in the day, there used to be like double battles, so each defending Pokemon would be like both defending Pokemon, but definitely not a thing in this format. So 20 is okay, but the confusion is actually better than just the confusion, because back in the day, Pokepowers got shut off if they were the Pokemon that had them were affected by a special condition. So being able to confuse your opponent's active, there are some really solid Pokepowers in this format, and being able to abuse the stalling of Cracking Voice is definitely decent. Before we continue on to the other attack, the reason that you play 3 Loudred, this is one of the modifiers in this deck that I think is kind of important. So you play 3 for 2 reasons. One is because Ancient Technical Machine Rock is just like really solid, and it's kind of the meta right now. So playing a 4-2-4, well, it's good. I mean, the 3 just means that you're taking that many more turns until you're taken back a really long ways by Ancient Technical Machine Rock. Like, it's not as devastating to your board when you play 3. And then the other reason is because you are using Mr. Briney's Compassion a lot in this deck. You play 4 of it. We'll get to it when we get to the card, but the 4-3-4 just means you can kind of waterfall those evolutions a little bit more, and you don't have to worry about having that rare candy in your hand. Okay, so the second attack, Light Punch. For 3, it does 40. It's super whatever attack, not amazing, not awful. The fact that you can do it for a boost, though, is actually kind of good. So getting into Exploud, the main attacker, this dude is a absolute monster. So Exploud has got 120 HP, which is significantly higher than most of the other Pokemon in this format. Usually 100 is kind of the meta, like Swampert, it's got 100. Blaziken has 100 as well. So having that 120, just a little bit more than usual, and it actually matters for some of your matchups when it comes down to the numbers. So yeah, it has that 2 retreat still and retains that weakness to fighting as well. Breaking Sound is the first attack on Exploud. So Breaking Sound is really good. It's probably the main attack they're going to be using. So for 1 colorless, this does 10 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. This kind of abuses Dunsparce. Like Dunsparce, if you have Dunsparce and 1 more Pokemon and then you use Strike and Run, they have a board of 5 Pokemon. And then for 1 energy, you're able to do 5 total damage. That's a pretty solid exchange in this format. And it puts a lot of pressure on your opponent as well. Like they're put on a timer, because if they only have like, let's say they have support Pokemon. Delcatty's got 70 HP, I believe. Yeah, 70 HP. So you put them on a timer where you're like, well, I'm gonna kill your Delcatty in 7 turns. So if you don't have an answer after that, then you might just be stuck not drawing anything. And for some decks, that's really important. Like Blaziken's engine relies on Delcatty really hard, so being able to take those Pokemon out is definitely really cool. Breaking Sound is a really solid attack. And then for one too, like the reason it's so good is because you can just hit it on the turn one. Like if you have Candy, Exploud, you can just go boom, hit the Breaking Sound, and start putting some really hard pressure on your opponent right away. So the second attack, Base Control. So Base Control is also all 4 of like the fact that this Pokemon has 4 attacks and they're all useful in their own way is really cool. I don't know a lot of other cards that have 4 attacks on them, so having lots of options is really cool with this card. Base Control is one of the options that you have. So for 2, it snipes 30 on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Like I said, if you're playing against a Blaziken deck, they do really rely on Delcatty. So if you use Breaking Sound like 4 times, you can use Base Control and then snipe the Delcatty if that's really what's bugging you. It kind of really depends on what your opponent's board is, but having that option to snipe 30 is very cool, especially when you already have that one attach. It's just a single attach, and then you can snipe 30 somewhere that you want to. And then the third attack also has some uses, but it's a little bit different. So for 3, it doesn't really go with the strategy, but it is good. So for 3, Thunderous Roar does 30, and then the defending Pokemon is now confused. Like I was saying before, there are some really powerful Poke powers in this format. Being able to shut those off with Thunderous Roar is really cool. Also the fact that this is available for just a boost energy, being able to go boost 30, confuse. I remember I was playing a tournament in 2004 against, I remember if it was Liam Williams or Oliver Barr, but they were playing Muck EX. I was playing one of them with Muck, and I think it was Liam. And like I was in a really dicey position. I didn't really have much to do, but I did have a boost energy, so I just went boost Thunderous Roar, and then he flipped some Tails on Confusion, and I ended up winning that game because of the Tails flips on Confusion. So it can be cool in some situations. Definitely Confusion is a good option to have in this deck. And then Hyper Voice is the final attack. So for 4 energy, it does 60 damage. Not an attack you're going to be using a ton of without boost energy. Like sure, loading 4 energy can happen, but usually it's going to be a single attach and then a boost into Hyper Voice. But being able to hit that 60 to, like if your opponent only has like 1 valid attacker on the board and they have enough damage to get knocked out, sometimes just killing it is the best option. So Hyper Voice is really good. Okay, getting into Dunsparce, some of the support Pokemon here. So you play 3 Dunsparce, not 4, because you play 4 Friend Ball, which we're also going to get into in a sec. So Dunsparce has got 50 HP, colorless, single retreat, and weakness to fighting. That is one thing that this deck just kind of gets trounced by. Everything in it is fighting weak. Every Pokemon is fighting weak. So it does really struggle against Swampert. Swampert EX is an absolute beast, but that is where Confusion can come in handy. I mean, being able to hit him for Confuse and then pray for that Tails can give you an option. So anyway, Strike and Run is the attack on Dunsparce. The first attack, really solid attack. So for 1 colorless, search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. Shuffle your deck afterward, and then you may switch Dunsparce with one of your bench Pokemon. So that's actually great because getting a Whismur, you just want to be attacking with an Exploud as soon as you can, and retaining that energy on Dunsparce can actually be good because Sudden Flash is also a good attack. So Sudden Flash, 1 for 10. Flip a coin. If heads, each defending Pokemon is now paralyzed. Again, the odd wording on each defending Pokemon, but it just means your opponent's paralyzed. And that can be a really good stall tactic as well. Like if you don't have an Exploud yet, just being able to like, okay, well, I'm going to sit here and paralyze your Dunsparce until I can find an Exploud is a very valid strategy for sure. Okay, now getting into the Delcatty line. So you play 2 Skitty, 50 HP, colorless, single retreat, and weakness to fighting. Energy Catch. There's a couple other Skitties you can play. I'll put them on the screen. But I like this one just because it's kind of a consistency out. Like if you have a Skitty and a Delcatty and you don't really have anything in your hand and you need an energy, being able to search your discard Energy Catch, search your discard pile for a basic energy card, show it to your opponent, put it in your hand, can be a clutch option. I mean, you may as well. It kind of depends. I mean, if you have an energy card in your hand to attach, you already have to have it from earlier in the game, which doesn't really happen. But the 50 HP is also really good, and the art honestly is so cute. But that's not the reason you play it. The 50 HP, I think that's one of the main reasons, just because Blaziken is such an oppressive deck, and the 40 HP Skitty is just 1 less turn away from being Ancient Technical Machine rocked to take a Delcatty out of play. So I think that HP buff is actually really, really important in this format. And then Double Edge for 2 does 30, and then Skitty does 10 damage to itself. So Delcatty. Delcatty's got 70 HP. This Pokemon is really good. So many decks in this format play this. So 70 HP, colorless, single retreat, and a weakness to fighting. Energy draw. Once during your turn before you attack, you may discard 1 energy card from your hand, then draw up to 3 cards from your deck. So just a really solid draw. I mean, you don't play a ton of energy. You play 9 and then 4 boost, which kind of seems like a lot, but it's not actually a ton, especially because you do want to be attaching to your benched Exploud. Usually what it is you have like one Explode in the active with a single energy, and then you're attaching to the ones on the bench so that you have the options to use those other attacks later, because you're gonna be Brineying the one in the active most likely. But anyway, being able to discard the energies that you're not using to draw cards is also really good. So it just keeps you consistent and keeps you finding the cards that you need. And then max energy source is its attack. So for one colorless, it does 10 damage times the number of energy attached to all of your active Pokemon. So again, double battle wording, but essentially it's all the energy attached to Delcatty, which is pretty bad. Not really an attack you're going to be using that often. Okay, and then you also play a 1/1 Magneton line. So this is the Magnemite that you play. There are a couple other Magnemites as well, but this is the correct one for this deck in my opinion. There is one other one that you might be able to argue that has a paralyzed attack, but I think that Random Spark is better. So Magnemite's got 50 HP, it's a lightning type, single retreat, resistance to metal, and a weakness to fighting. So Random Spark, choose one of your opponent's Pokemon. This attack does 10 damage to that Pokemon. So I mean, with Breaking Sound, it just fits in right well with the deck. You just are able to snipe 10 somewhere, and depending on what your opponent's board looks like, if you're in a really dicey spot, you might just have to snipe 10 with a Magnemite, and having that option I think is going to come up more than paralyzed stalling, and being able to snipe that 10 can be really important. So that's why you play the Random Spark one. And also the art matches. That's the real reason you play it. Not actually. So Magneton, 70 HP, lightning type, single retreat, retains that resistance to metal and weakness to fighting. So Magnetic Field. Once your turn, before you attack, if you have a basic energy in your discard pile, you may discard any one card from your hand, then put up to 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand. So this is kind of just fits with the Delcatty engine. You can kind of just slap Magneton and Delcatty in like any deck, and you just have draw in that deck. So that's kind of cool. But Magnetic Field has a second use, and that use is actually thinning. So being able to discard Dunsparce when you're a little bit later into the game, like you don't need Dunsparce once you're already set up. So being able to thin that with Magnetic Field and kind of thin anything else that you need, like if you're entirely already set up or out of Pokemon in your deck, like using friend balls and thinning friend balls, or honestly just thinning whatever you don't need, being able to discard that card to retain the energy back. Not only are you getting energy back to energy draw, but you're also thinning your deck in case your opponent hits you with a Desert Shaman, because that is a card that does see a fair amount of play in this format. Usually your list should be playing at least one Desert Shaman. This deck definitely plays one, but it's just coming to more and more meta. Some lists play 2 or even 3 depending on the deck. So being able to thin your deck means that Desert Shaman is less of a threat into the late game. And then Magnetic Force is actually a really good attack, and it's the reason that you play Lightning Energy in this deck. So for Lightning and a colorless, Magnetic Force does 10 times the amount of energy attached to all of your Pokemon, excluding Magneton. So I mean, with boost energy, if you have a big fat Exploud and then a boost and then some energy on Magneton, you are able to hit for lightning weakness, so that can kind of be cool against some decks, but not really an attack you're going to be using often. But you do play lightning energy just so you do have that option. Okay, getting into some of the trainer cards. So starting off with 4 Friend Ball. This is one of the like particular things about this list that I kind of innovated myself. I think 4 Friend Ball in this list is so good just because, like I said, the meta is Dunsparce, and so many decks play Dunsparce and they want to get Dunsparce out and be attacking with Dunsparce right away just because it's such a good setup Pokemon. But because of that, you just get to utilize Friend Ball so hard, and like Delcatty as well, obviously, but to a lesser extent, because almost every deck plays Dunsparce, but not every deck plays Delcatty. But yeah, Friend Ball, just being able to search literally everything in your deck except for Magneton, finds every single Pokemon except for the Magneton line. So that's clutch. Just being able, and it lets your turn 2 Breaking Sound consistency be really high because you have 4 Exploud outs, 4 Friend Balls. So if your opponent starts a Dunsparce, you have like 8 outs in your deck, and then you just need a rare candy and an energy, and then all of a sudden you're attacking. So it just keeps your early aggression consistent, and it's just really, it's just a great card. Just being able to find your Loudreds, your Whismurs, your Delcattys, your Skitties, just finds everything in the deck, and it's so good. And your Dunsparce too. That's one of the reasons you can get away with playing 3 Dunsparce, is because you play 4 Briney and 4 Friend Ball. Okay, so you also play 4 Rare Candy. Rare Candy is really solid. It says, I didn't even say what Friend Ball did. Essentially, it lets you search for a Pokemon with the same type as one of your opponent's Pokemon. So yeah, Rare Candy. Choose one of your basic Pokemon in play. If you have a Stage 1 or Stage 2 card that evolves from that Pokemon, you may put that card on the basic Pokemon. So clutch for getting a fast Delcatty out, but usually you're just going to be using this to get Exploud out, and you play a lot more Rare Candies than you play like Exploud lines. Like I've said in some past videos, usually the Rare Candy rules, you play 1 more than you need, and that is way not true in this deck. Like you have 1 missing here, and then you play 1, then I guess there's just 3 as well. But it partially fits into the aggression of the deck, but it also fits in because Usually you want to be attacking with 4 Explouds in a game. That's like how you can make this game really, really hard for your opponent. Like I said, Exploud has a ton of HP, so if you're forcing them to hit like 110 every time and they're like 10 short of the knockout every time, so frustrating. If you have 6 Explouds in a game, what's that math? 620 times 620, 720 base health. If you're attacking with 6 Explouds with it, which is a lot of health in this format, that's a ton of damage to be forcing your opponent to hit before they win the game. And that's not even including Briney healing, right? Like if you talk about Briney healing, then all of a sudden we're starting to get into 1,000 plus health, which is just pretty insane. And Rare Candy, with the recovery cards in the late game, it just lets you play those early game rare candies or into the late game if you found your Loudreds, and then you can just recover like Whismurs and Explouds and then have those rare candies in the deck just to be able to hit those aggressive Explouds into the late game as well, because that is essentially your only attacker in this deck. Okay, so you also play 3 Ancient Technical Machine Rock. This is an amazing card in this deck. So Ancient Technical Machine Rock is a technical machine, obviously. You can put it on any of your Pokemon that are evolved, and it gives it an attack called Stone Generator. So Stone Generator, for 1, if your opponent has any evolved Pokemon in play, remove the highest stage evolution card from each of them and put those cards back into his or her hand. So the reason you play 3, I bumped it up from 2 to 3, just because I think like it's just such a good card for the deck. It gives you a lot of win conditions, because not only can you win on prizes, you can take 6 prizes quickly before your opponent, but with Ancient Technical Machine Rock, sometimes you can just win by board clear. Because if your opponent, let's say they have like a Blaziken and a Delcatty and a Magneton and like another Blaziken or something, and they all have like 50 plus damage on them, and both of the Blazikens were rare candied, if you just use Stone Generator, you win the game, because all those basics have 50 or less HP, and then as soon as they have 50 or less HP, they just get knocked out. And then if you're able to KO all 4 Pokemon, you don't even have to take all 6 of your prizes. You can just board wipe your opponent. So that's the reason you play 3. It's just important to be consistent, and it is a really good card at screwing your opponent up into the mid game as soon as you get some damage on their board. Really, really solid card in this deck. Okay, so getting into the supporter cards, you're playing 4 Mr. Briney's Compassion. So there's 2 main reasons you play this card. The first one and the main reason is to be healing your Exploud. I've seen some other lists have some other healing options in the format. Like I've seen Blossom, which I'm not a massive fan of. I mean, 20 a turn is cute, but I don't think it's going to impact as many games as Mr. Briney's Compassion. And Mr. Briney's Compassion also has secondary uses as well. So being able to heal your Pokemon is great. Another thing that is really great about Mr. Briney's Compassion is you're able to pick up the Exploud entirely. So if you're like paralyzed by Dunsparce, or if you're poisoned or burned or whatever, you're just able to remove all those special conditions. And that's actually pretty big in this format. There is some definitely important attackers that do hit you for some special conditions. Like I said, Dunsparce or Vileplume X is another decent attacker in this format that can hit you for some special conditions. And just being able to get out of that is really clutch, as well as healing. And then the secondary use is finding early Dunsparce, because if you have a Briney's Compassion in your hand, this is one of the reasons that I bumped it up to 4. Originally I was testing like 2 and then 3 in this deck, but the issue that I found was late game I wanted more Briney's in my hand and I just didn't have it. And I also used it early game. So the way that you use Mr. Briney's early game is you find, Friend Ball for a Dunsparce, but you don't really want to attach and then attach and attack and waste those 2 turns. But if you have a Briney's, you can go like Friend Ball for a Dunsparce, attach to Dunsparce, Briney's the active, all of a sudden Dunsparce is active, and then you can just bench that Pokemon back down again, and then all of a sudden you're attacking with Dunsparce on your first turn, or second turn, I guess, in this format. But just having that retreat option, and then also being able to have that into the late game, this is the reason you play 4. It's just such a versatile, useful card in this deck. Very, very good. So this will play 4 Steven's Advice. Steven's Advice is a pretty staple supporter card in this format. Really solid supporter. So Steven says, draw a number of cards equal to the number of your opponent's Pokemon in play. If you have more than 7 cards, including this one, then you can't play this card. So just a solid draw. Like I said, Dunsparce sets up your opponent's board, and then as soon as your opponent uses a Dunsparce, you're at least drawing for 4, which is definitely decent enough. Let's play 3 Copycat. Copycat is a solid card in this format as well, just because Delcatty is a pretty staple in a lot of decks. So usually the hand size does tend to get a little bit out of control at some points in the game. So being able to abuse that when your opponent uses like double energy draw, and then all of a sudden they have like a 10 or 11 size card hand, just being able to go Copycat for 11 or 12 is pretty insane, and definitely a really, really solid card in this format as well. Play 3 Oracle as well. This is more of your like combo card piece, and maybe more of a setup piece as well. So it says choose 2 cards from your deck, shuffle the rest of your deck, then put those on top of your deck in any order. So it seems kind of mediocre, but with Delcatty, you can just get those cards right into your hand in the same turn. So it's really useful for finding Ancient Technical Machine Rock, really useful for finding like Rare Candy and an Exploud if that's what you need, or just really whatever, right? Like if you need a Magneton, if you need an energy, if you need a boost energy, it just lets you hit those combos when you need to find them. And then you play one Desert Shaman as well. Like I said, it's good to be able to hand disrupt your opponent. The hand size can get a little bit unruly in this format, so being able to have an option where you're just like, your hand size is like 14 and I really am not digging that, so how about we make that 4 instead? It's definitely a really solid advantage, and you only play 1 because it's not amazing for you either. You don't love shuffle drawing 4, but having that hand disruption is just too important not to play a 1 up, I think. You also play 1 Town Volunteers. So Town Volunteers says take 5 baby Pokemon, basic Pokemon, evolution, and or basic energy cards from your discard pile, then show them to your opponent and shuffle them into your deck. So like I said before, with a Rare Candy, it seems way too much. But with Town Volunteers, let's say you attack with a 4/3/4 and then use one of the Rare Candies. Then you want to attack with 2 more Explouds. You need 2 more Rare Candies. And then when you talk about that, like into the late game, if you're talking about attacking with 6 Explouds, you are technically only playing 1 extra Rare Candy if you're using those Rare Candies to evolve into Exploud and attack with Exploud. And Town Volunteers, like, you only play 4 Explouds, so you want to be attacking with your 120 HP stage 2, obviously. And if you don't play a Pokemon recovery, that can't happen for all 6 of your opponent's prizes. And that's when this deck gets really deadly, is when you start forcing your opponent to, like, hit 5 or 6 Explouds with Brineys. There's just like so much damage that they have to hit, and usually you can get a board wipe with Breaking Sound and an Ancient Technical Machine a long time before they can wipe all 6 of your Explouds out. Okay, so getting into the energy cards, you play 9 Lightning Energy, which is, you know, seems like a little bit much, but you also rely on it to draw with Delcatty, so it is also a little bit of your draw engine. So yeah, 9 just makes a lot of sense, and you only need 1 to attack, so it just helps you with that early game consistency. You do need that energy on Dunsparce as well, so you want an energy on Dunsparce, you want an energy on Exploud, and playing any less than this, I think it just makes your energy line a little bit inconsistent, so I think 9 is a pretty perfect spot for this deck. And like I said, with Magneton, you have that recovery as well, so it's not that big of a deal if you're not able to find energy into the late game, because you can just get it back with Magneton. You also play 4 Boost Energy. So boost, like I was talking about before with the Exploud, it can help you get up there with those 3rd and 4th attacks, because they are a little bit costly, and as well as the Magneton, but mostly it's just to have that out. This is one of those cards that I think could be maybe cut down to like a 3 of in this deck for maybe like a 2nd Desert Shaman. I'm not actually sure what else I would put in there. Boost is a really good card. Just being able to confuse your opponent in a single attach can be the difference. Like I said, it saved me that one game against Muckyx. So it's a really good card, and being able to just throw it on a stage 2 and then be able to hit like a 3 energy attack in 1 turn can change the tide of a game if you're starting to fall a little bit behind. Okay, this has been Exploud from 2004. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to get to them. And if you made it this far, leave a like and a sub. I really appreciate it. We're trying to get to 500 subs. As soon as we get to 500, we're going to be doing a giveaway in the North American region. So if you're in North America, Canada, United States, we're going to be doing a giveaway as well as a face reveal at 500 subs. So definitely give that a like, a sub. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will see you next time.